Hey everyone, Chris here from IELTS Advantage, and today we're going to look at how collocations affect your IELTS scores. We've received lots of emails from people asking how collocations can improve your IELTS score. So what we're going to do is we're going to look at, are collocations actually important? If so, why are they important? What are they? Give you some examples and give you a few little tests to test your use of collocations. And then we're going to look at it within the context of IELTS. What are the examiners actually looking for when they're looking at your writing or listening to your speaking, and help you improve your use of collocations within the context of IELTS. And then we're going to give you an improvement plan, a specific step-by-step plan that you can use to help you improve your use of collocations. And I keep using the word use of collocations. You're not memorizing collocations. The IELTS test is not a memorization test. So that's why learning lists of collocations is a complete waste of time. You need to learn how to use collocations both in writing and speaking. So that's why I'll refer to using collocations throughout. So why are they important? So improved use will improve your overall level of English. IELTS is an English test. A lot of people forget that. So they try and find tips and tricks and strategies and techniques and pay very little attention to actually improving your general level of English. If you improve your general level of English, you're going to improve your IELTS score. So will improved use of collocations help you improve your score? Yes, of course, in conjunction with all of the other things that you need to improve, but it's a very good first step, and it's something that the examiners will specifically be listening for in the speaking test and looking for in the writing test. So what are collocations? Very simple definition: two or more words that naturally go together in English. This can be really frustrating for non-native English speakers because it's just one of those things that English speakers just get. They just are aware of them. If I walked out of the office here and asked the people outside, they're all native English speakers, what's a collocation? None of them, or 99% of them in this town, would not know what a collocation is. But they naturally use them every single day because they've just been hearing them and using them since they were babies. But it can be quite frustrating for a non-native English speaker, an English learner, because there's no rules. A lot of people learn English they love the rules of English, the grammar especially. But when it comes to collocations, there's no rules when it comes to collocations. You just have to learn them. And we're going to show you how to learn them in the following part of this lesson. So, a little bit of a test. This is one that when I started dating my wife, and in Vietnam, where we were dating, we were often in places that one of the cool things about Vietnam in the raining season is there's tin roofs on most of the buildings. And when it rains very heavily during the wet season, it makes a really cool sound. And my wife would often say, "Oh, big rain." So was she correct? Does big and rain go together? Or heavy rain? Which one is correct? Big rain or heavy rain? So again, this is a really good example of why it's quite frustrating for an English learner when it comes to learning collocations, because I know exactly what my wife meant when she said big rain. She meant that there was a big rainstorm and it was falling very heavily on the roof. And she knew exactly what she meant. And so it can be quite frustrating because I said to her, well, technically it's not big rain, it's heavy rain. She's like, yeah, but you know what I mean. And often this can cause a problem with translation from your native language, because in your native language the literal translation might be something like big rain, but in English the collocation, the natural two words that naturally go together is heavy rain. This is the correct answer. So let's have a look at some other examples. So let's say you go to a birthday party and there's some cake. Delicious cake, does that go together? Beautiful cake, does that go together? Which one do you think that you could use? Which one would be more appropriate? Well, if you said delicious cake, you'd be right. If you said beautiful cake, you'd also be right. There are many different variations. Again, this is one of the frustrating things when for an English learner, is there's many options to choose from. There's no like black and white, right or wrong, 1 or 0. There can be many, many different collocations that you could use to describe something. So this is like an adjective, noun collocation, and there's many different ways that you could use them. Another frustrating thing is if you were to take this adjective and apply it to a different noun. So let's say you see a lady. Could you describe a lady as beautiful? Yes. Could you describe a lady as delicious? Probably not. Let's say you see a man. Would you describe a man as beautiful? Well, some men are beautiful, but a more appropriate way of describing a man, a natural way to describe a man would be a handsome man, if you wanted to say he was good looking. So again, there's a lot of variation, but they're quite fun to learn. And learning collocations gives you an insight into the language and the context and even the culture of the country that you're going to. So try and make them fun when you're learning them. And it really does help you sound more like a native English speaker. One of the ways that if you're listening to a non-native English speaker, one of the easy ways that you'll be able to tell, even very, very, very high level learners of English, you'll be able to tell that they're not a native English speaker because of their incorrect use of collocations, because they're quite tricky. So the better your use of them, the more you will sound like a native English speaker. So here are some examples of different types, and I'm sure that you guys can think of, in the comments, put different types of collocations in there. For adjective, noun, like it's been a really hard day at work. You wouldn't necessarily think that this adjective goes with this noun. A native English speaker wouldn't think twice about it. They've heard it millions of times, but when someone's learning this, like hard, you would think that, you know, this is hard, or the floor is hard, or your head is hard, but you wouldn't think a day is hard. So it can be a little bit tricky. A noun, a round of applause. One of the interesting things about noun collocations, if you've ever seen the show Game of Thrones, one way that the writer, George R.R. Martin, made the world a little bit different from ours is he changed the language slightly. So instead of saying the treasurer, it was master of coin, or a spy, he called it the master of whisperers. And there's lots of noun collocations that you wouldn't normally use in English that are in that book. So it's quite interesting to see how language can change, and language can change in novels and books and things like that. But check that out. You could probably Google that, noun collocations, Game of Thrones, probably you can see it. Noun verb, so you've very, very common in task 1 academic. The price of oil falls as temperatures increase. You'll be describing a lot of data for task 1 academic, and you'll often get these noun verb collocations or verb noun collocations. Click on the link and send me an email. So you've got 2 collocations there within the same sentence. So in the comments, let me know any other ones that you can think of, or ones that you might have used in your essays or in your speaking test. So what does this matter in terms of the IELTS test? Well, it matters for speaking and writing. Speaking and writing are normally the 2 that students struggle with the most. And the examiner is going to be listening for your use of collocations in the speaking test, and they're going to be looking for your use of collocations in the writing test. And it will be directly linked to your lexical resource, your vocabulary score, basically. So 25% of your score. And there's 2 things that they'll be listening out for. Accurate. So for example, if you said, you know, if they ask you about the weather and you said big rain, that would not be accurate. So you have to learn them properly and use them properly. But also importantly, appropriate. Why do I put this? Well, the way that most students learn collocations and try and boost their score when it comes to IELTS using collocations is they'll learn lists of collocations. Or some teacher or some school will say, use these band 9 or band 8 collocations. And they'll just try and insert them into their essays or their task 1 reports, or in every single speaking answer they'll try and insert one of these high-level collocations. You have to learn the context. It's all about context. When is it appropriate to use these? When is it not appropriate to use them? And if you're just inserting them, pushing them into every answer, then they're not appropriate to use them, and you're probably not using them accurately anyway. So how can you make sure that your use of collocations is accurate and appropriate? Well, it all comes down to how you learn collocations. And we're going to give you now a collocation improvement plan. Number one, learn in context. Context is key. If you don't learn in context, you're not going to know when to use them. So you learn in context by using real sources of English, all right? What are real sources of English? Books. Read a book in English, and a newspaper article, a podcast, a TV show, a movie, or whatever. Any use of real English, or just people chatting, or this YouTube video. Don't learn lists, basically. Number one is basically another way of saying you're not going to remember how to use, remember we're using it, not memorizing it. You're not going to learn how to use collocations by learning lists. You have to learn them in context from real sources of English. So how do you do that? Read every day, listen every day. If you want to improve your English, one of the best ways is to read every single day or listen every single day. Don't ask me like which book should you read to get the best collocations. Collocations are in every single sentence, in every single paragraph of every single book and article and podcast that you could ever come across. So there's just full of information there. So when you're listening to a podcast or watching a TV show or reading a newspaper article, when you see a new word, note down the collocations of that word. Not only the way that it collocates in that sentence that you see or that you hear, but look up the other collocations, and you can just Google this. So for example, you could Google adjective plus cake collocations, or same with rain, or same with any of these examples. If you saw these, you could just Google these and you'd find a list of appropriate collocations. There's even websites where it will tell you the most common collocations, the most common uses of those collocations, and the ones that are really rare and the ones that are common. I can't remember off the top of my head which website that is on. I will try and link it below when I find that out, but you can probably Google that and find that out yourself. So you should get a book, get a notebook, record all of your new vocabulary, put the collocations in there, put example sentences, put all the information you need to memorize and use that word correctly, and then regularly review those words and then use them and get feedback when you're using them. And that's very, very simple. And if you do that, rather than learning lists, you will really improve your use of collocations, improve your vocabulary, improve your writing, improve your speaking. And that's it. Really simple. Simple, but it's not easy. Many of you will not do this because these 4 little steps require you to actually do work. Most of you don't want to do any work. You just want some quick tips and hacks and a list of collocations to use. That doesn't work, and I'm not going to give you something that doesn't work. This does work, requires a little bit of extra work, but what is the point in doing this test if you're not going to actually achieve a high score? So if you want to achieve a high score, put in the work. It is there for you if you want it. So if you want more information about collocations or anything at all, I've created a blog post on my website, IELTS Advantage. You'll see it in the comments, and it'll give you more examples of collocations, more examples of the different types, just going into a lot more detail on how to use a vocabulary book and all of that. And that's for collocations, but you can also click and get all of our information on task 1, task 2, speaking, reading, vocabulary, listening. Absolutely everything that you need is available for free. Just Google IELTS Advantage and you can have a look there. Or if you need my help, if you need coaching, personal coaching from me, or if you have a question about IELTS or anything like that, send me an email, chris@ieltsadvantage.com. I can't guarantee that I'll be able to work with you or I'll have time, but send me an email, tell me your problem, and I'll try my best. Either myself or one of my team will get back to you. Hopefully you find that interesting, and looking forward to seeing your comments below, and thank you very much, guys. I'll see you again for another video later this week. Bye-bye.